Today we are going to be taking a look at our solubility rules. Basically what we're trying to do is figure out which types of ions like to form solutions and which types of ions like to form precipitates. So the way that this is set up is we have a bunch of chemicals across the top, we have a bunch of chemicals going down the side. Basically the chemicals across the top, these are all going to be aqueous. They are all chemicals that dissolve really well. And we know that when we look, say, for example, at this bottle here, it says it's got Na2CO3 in it, that in reality, they are completely dissolved. When you look at this, you can see that it's nice and clear. And that means that there are some NAs floating around and there are some CO3 2 minuses floating around. We are going to be focusing on the CO3 2 minus for this particular chemical. Basically, anything across the top, we are focusing on the anion. So the carbonate, the chloride, the hydroxide, the nitrate, the phosphate, and the sulfate. Down the side, we will be focusing on the cations. So these are all aqueous. Once again, you can see that at the start, they're nice and clear. We don't see any solids floating around in here. That's the true of all of these things. And they're basically floating around. So this particular one is iron chloride. So we would expect there to be some Fe+3 floating around and some Cl- floating around. And what we're going to do is we're going to mix each one of these together. So you'll see there's already some dots on the paper. I already took some of the sample and I put a drop on top of the X. And what we're going to do now is we're going to, basically I've put aluminum chloride in each one of these boxes. I'm going to take each one of these chemicals and mix it with the aluminum chloride, and we'll be able to take a look and see if any type of reaction occurs. That reaction is basically showing us that a precipitate is forming. So in order to help us see the precipitate a little bit, that's what the black X's are for. The black X's will get a little bit harder to see if a precipitate is going to form. So we're going to go ahead and get the carbonate going here, and we're going to go right down the way. And so looking at these things, you can see that certain ones of them don't like to dissolve. So for example, if we look at the aluminum carbonate, so we'll zoom in on that, we can see that there's a spot here where the X has gotten very difficult to see. Okay, so it's forming what's known as a precipitate. So Al combining with CO3 is a situation that does not like to dissolve, versus the NH4 with the CO3, it does. We can see that the NH4 likes to dissolve. That X is still crystal clear, but we see in the next one that it's getting a little bit foggy. So those X's are going to help us to figure out which chemicals are not soluble and which ones are. So we can see foggy, 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 definitely foggy, foggy, clear, foggy, and then we have this last one up above here, which is, there we go, a little bit foggy. So we're going to move over to the next one now. We're going to use the chlorine. So we're testing the solubility of our chlorines. So it looks like we got a couple of murky ones here. We got a couple of precipitates. We have a precipitate that formed here and here for those particular ones. Moving to the hydroxide. Oh, getting a little mix in there. Okay, so as far as this one goes, it's a little difficult to see, but we saw that this X here for the copper, we are getting a little bit of precipitate here. It's just not directly over the X, so from your point of view, it's a little harder to see, but right off over in the side here, I do see some solid. Not a lot, but there's some. We see some solid here, definitely, yes. This one looks pretty clear to me. Maybe a faint. Yeah, you know, there is a little bit of a faint bit of precipitate that's popping up in the lower part of the X here. It would work better if I could get a stick out and stir all these, but we do have some faint going on there. Definitely this is a yes for the silver, and then the barium, this one is a no. I think the little bit that we're seeing here is sort of dripping down from that other one. Go over to the nitrate now. Not seeing anything there. The phosphate. Okay, so the phosphate is coming in. Sometimes it takes a couple of seconds for it to start showing up. Let me zoom back out so we can see that. So it looks like we see some happening here. Definitely here, 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 and here. Lots on that one. And then the last one here, we've got sulfate. So we see mostly clear through here. We definitely have a precipitate here and here. All right, so you've got all the data you need. Let's go ahead and move forward and try and figure out some of our solubility rules.